Alles klar, Herr Kommissar.
Now, you just mentioned something about robots, correct?
Yeah.
So that also relates to artificial intelligence, correct?
Yeah.
Now, could you maybe... I know we didn't plan on this, but could you actually mention more about artificial intelligence? Like, how far have we gotten to, replicating, I guess, a human with, robotics? How close have we gotten?
You know what? I define AI as it's often called, as implementing human intelligence or human capabilities into machines. And it's really funny. I use a video that's narrated by Linda Hamilton of Terminator fame towards the beginning of the class. And that video was made in 1995. And it's still pretty much on the mark today. Like, if it didn't say by the year 2000 several times, I don't think the students would know a big difference. But in actuality, there is AI all around us in many small ways. And in the last few years, the military has really done some very surprising things with it. So I'm not holding my breath for androids. But, if the androids are around by the time I die, maybe that will be a little exciting. They can take care of all of us, do all those little things we don't want to do, carry our books to class. I have, other people feel like, well, don't we have enough people in the world as it is? And I think that's those are the kinds of questions we explore. Does technology control us? How much are we machines or not? So lots of interesting questions that it evokes. Some people are just like, it's like Mount Everest. Don't we want to create something that's like us?
Right.
And see if we can do it.
I believe aesthetically we've gotten very close to replicating, the human look. I remember looking on YouTube, they showed this, I guess, robotic Asian woman. And she looked so realistic with the way she talked and her face and with the frowning and the smiling. And it's just mind-boggling how far we've gotten yet so far, because still I think it's going to be a long time till we can truly replicate a human personality, at least.
Oh yeah, I agree absolutely. In fact, there's two things that really touch on that. One is there's this contest every year to see can people be fooled, and it's sort of like set up as like a chat IMing kind of thing, and you want to figure out, is the person you're talking to on the other end, is that a robot or is that a person? The robots have never been mistaken for being people ever in this contest, but a number of times there's really a person on the other end, but they're mistaken for being a robot.
Oh wow.
So it really is. So they have this interesting judgment where human beings are actually rated on how human they are, and it's really surprising the number of people who get rated as robots. So that's I think that's one of those funny things. The other is maybe the technology will come along someday where they really can sort of take a brain scan of you and every down to that detail, and then implement that in a machine. And so it essentially becomes like a copy of you.
That's crazy.
And it's, probably not in the next 20 years, but science and technology have surprised us before.
It's also very interesting. You mentioned how humans, you said that they were rating them as robots. They thought that the humans were robots, right?
Yeah.
I read a study that actually said that human empathy has decreased over the years, especially with college students. And personally, I think you could attribute that to all of the messaging we've been doing lately, with text messaging being the most preferred form of communication over vocal, voice calls and Facebook messaging, emails. It just seems like we're always just talking on, a type pad, or I guess a screen pad nowadays with the iPad. But, so I think, maybe that has something to do with it, but I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, I agree with you. And there's a couple of things. One is, for a long time, I didn't have a cell phone. And I wondered, why on earth would anyone want to text? I mean, that just seems like the stupidest thing in the world. And then I got a cell phone and discovered texting, and I have to be honest, I prefer that too. I can't even say why. The other thing, which is sort of really funny, is I teach one of these classes, this group dynamics class, and technology is a great way to connect us when we're physically apart, but when we're together, people often use that, and I see students doing that to separate themselves. So they'd sit in on their little group dynamics activities with their laptop and their cell phone, talking to people who aren't there. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm going to mark you as absent if I see you using that stuff, because you're supposed to be interacting with these people right in front of you, and because I'm going to mark you absent because essentially you are, and it really is amazing. This one time, I did what's called a rapport building activity, where you just do active listening and you pay attention to the other person's body movements and breathing and what they're saying and so on. And at the end of that, everyone was like, wow, we haven't had a conversation like that in years. And so it really is, being in the here and now.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, I've actually met women or, college students on Facebook, the ones that I've never actually met in person. Like, we just happen to add each other. And, we'd have these amazing chats on Facebook. Amazing. And then when I meet her in person, it's like she can't talk at all. It's like she's almost a mute. I was just shocked, floored. I couldn't believe that, this person who seemed to have so much personality on Facebook really, in the real world, didn't. And I don't know what you can attribute that to. Maybe I was just, interpreting in my head her personality based on my own personality that I have, because we're just reading text. And there's only so many emoticons you can use to convey yourself that, maybe that was what was going on.
Well, I would say every person has an extroverted side of themselves and an introverted side of themselves. And there really is some research showing that people who, I'm going to say this, the medium of technology, things like email, allow us to express our introverted side more often and more clearly. And so for folks who maybe aren't that outgoing or hesitant, sure, they're going to come across as one way. But do know when you meet them, the what you get from that person in email is probably a lot of really who they are too. It just takes a little bit more comfort with each other in order to reach that point where people feel free to open up in person. And I would say give everyone some slack, because we're all still college students in the school of life, right?
How far have we gotten? Now, you mentioned about I guess, taking the memory of a person and, maybe one day implementing that into a robot, like replicating the human, right? We talked about that earlier. How far have we gotten to actually, or have we actually even been able to get any sort of memory data from a human brain into like a piece of electronics? Have we been able to actually copy data?
They have implemented 1/2 of a rat's brain in a computer down to the neuron level. So it's something I think that you all will see in your lifetime.
No way.
And now this was a supercomputer, and it didn't run at the real speed that a rat would run. I mean, brain-wise. But, you speed it up and you map the whole brain, and it's sort of a clone. It's an electronic clone. And I just wanted to emphasize, by the way, for your listeners, this isn't really quite what HCS is about, although it is one of my personal passions. And we do a lot of other stuff too, group dynamics and management and that kind of thing. But technology, that is one of the reasons, is I clearly remember the 70s. Not only was I alive then, I was conscious then. And boy, you all would be so bored in the 70s. Imagine no email, no internet, no cell phone, no video games, no a lot of things. You're certainly not going to come in and watch something on DVD or even the VCR. And our lives are so suffused with technology. So I imagine by the time something like this arrives, it will feel fairly
normal.
Fairly normal. I wouldn't say like familiar or whatnot, but it won't be a huge surprise.
You think it'll be like that movie with was it Brad Pitt? No, it wasn't Brad Pitt. It was Ben Affleck and also Uma Thurman. I forgot what the movie was called, but they basically would take the memory from his brain, and they could actually watch it on like a TV set. They could actually watch the memories in his brain. Think it'll ever get that far?
Yeah, in fact, we're already able to see what goes on inside of a cat's visual cortex as it watches things.
Wow.
And and that's old news. That's like 10 years ago. But that step up to humans in terms of ethics and whatnot, are you going to be the first one to volunteer for somebody to open up your skull, literally, and, implant some things that need to make that happen? So it's, yeah, I know, in some cases it feels far off, but give it 20 years when you all are my age, and it may be right there.
It's funny, because you must be the youngest looking professor I've ever seen in my life. I've had you as a professor, or should I say lecturer, and when the first I saw you, I thought you were a student. So, knock on wood.
That's right.
Dario Nardi, you got the good genes, my friend.
Well, I have to say, actually, I got really awful genes, but that has made me very careful and attentive my whole life. It really has. And my mother, actually, she is in her mid to late 60s. Her cousin is just turning 70, and he's the oldest family member ever that we know of in her family line to even reach 70. So it's actually something that's made me very wary as I've gone through life. That said, I actually was stopped on my way here to this radio show right now by somebody who thought I was a student. So
there you go.
That's very flattering. But yes, I'm actually in my 4th decade.
Well, it looks like you're in your 2nd decade.